Mabrika. Welcome, Soul Tribe, to this episode of Deep Soul Awakenings. Get ready to step into a place of visibility where your heart and intuition are your guides.
What's up, y'all? This is Millie. Welcome to this episode of Deep Soul Awakenings. I apologize that I haven't been posting so consistently. I actually ended up sick twice with something that seemed like the flu, but wasn't really the flu, but also felt like COVID, but wasn't actually COVID. And it seems that a lot of us have been ending up with the same type of sickness. So it's been fairly interesting. I also am a firm believer that when it comes to sickness, that is also our body purging a lot of the things within it that don't necessarily resonate with our bodies. But with that said, I just wanted to come on today to record a short episode, mostly because I feel like right now, for a lot of us, we're either coming out of a dark night of the soul or still in it. And it's been rough. There's a lot of things that have been coming up to be healed and to be shifted, and a lot of patterns that are being brought awareness to. To me, a dark night of the soul is essentially kind of like a place of surrender where we go into this like proverbial darkness where everything kind of feels like it used to feel, overwhelming. There's a lot of emotions. There's just a lot going on. We're triggered. We're feeling hopeless. I've also learned in my experience that when we go through these dark nights of the soul, that sometimes those are the moments where we feel the most disconnected and we don't necessarily feel our guides and our ancestors as strongly as we normally do. And I say this to say that it's not because they aren't there. It's not because they aren't with you. It's because they are essentially teaching you to move with faith and trust, and to not have you become codependent on them within this path. Because at the end of the day, this path is all about you and everything that you are and the energy that you are and the world that you manifest. Your reality is essentially your creation based on your mindset and your perception and your perspective. And we go through these dark nights of the soul sometimes when there's something that is being brought up. And, for a lot of us who've been on this path for a while, it's usually things that are from down deep inside that we've buried in. Sometimes it can be things that isn't even necessarily ours, and it can be inherited trauma. And it comes up to be acknowledged, to be healed, to be released, so that we can continue on this path and release those things that we tie ourselves to, that essentially at times stop us from becoming who we actually are, because the goal of this path essentially is knowledge of self. It's wholeness. And I've been working, with a lot of people lately, and I've been also helping with a spirit circle because I want to learn more about how to bring my gifts to the forefront and to be of service in the aspect of helping others communicate with their deceased loved ones and being able to hold a space in a group setting. And, something that I've noticed is that grief is so powerful, because grief can consume you, but it can also transform you. And when people pass away or things happen and we come into this place of grief, we start to feel lost. We start to lose sleep. We get caught in our thoughts and in these spirals. But sometimes in those moments, we also find our biggest teachers. And sometimes in those moments, we just need to ask somebody to see us when we can't see ourselves. It's something that I've noticed that's reoccurring is like this concept, this idea of like witchcraft and people casting spells or doing voodoo or doing, X, Y, and Z to try to keep you down, to try to stop you from growing and manifesting and all of these things, these limitations. And I used to be one of these people that believed heavily in all of this. And there was a point in time where I believed that I had an evil eye on me from when I was a baby because I was my father's only daughter. And my father at that time, was very highly coveted by women. But my mom was the one who was finally able to give him a daughter where he had only had sons. So my mom had me convinced that other women were wishing me bad and, sending all this negative energy to me. And there was an incident where I was a child where there was like shadow figures by my crib and all of these things that fed into that narrative. So for a long time, I believed that people had the ability to affect my life, to steer my life in a way where they deemed fit or in a negative way or in a limited way. And I had accepted that limitation. And on this path now, I realize that in accepting that limitation, I was giving away my power to these people, to this energy, to this perception, this perspective, and don't get me wrong, there are people in this world who will try to send energy your way. There are people in this world who don't want to see you succeed because something in you triggers them. But I am a firm believer that none of that energy can harm you or get to you or affect you or change your life in any kind of negative way unless you let it, unless you accept it. And it really goes back to perspective and perception and, that victim mindset. I used to operate so heavily from a victim mindset where I thought that everyone was out to get me. Everyone was out to get me. Everyone was trying to hurt me in some way. Everyone was trying to keep me down. And, I had convinced myself that my intuition, the way that I could read people was so strong. And I knew this to be a fact because I felt it. And on this path and in growing and learning and my heart space expanding, I've learned that I created that reality. That for as long as I would tell myself that people were coming to try to keep me down, I would become aware of things that would validate that feeling. And it could have been the simplest of things, but because that is the projection that I assign to it, that is the meaning that I assign to people's actions, that's what it was. And in all reality, we don't know why people act in the way that they do. We don't know why they speak in the way that they do. And if we're heavily thinking about something, we're going to bring that to us. So we're going to find people talking about it. It's going to pop up on social media, because we're that powerful. Algorithm is that powerful. The matrix is that powerful to bring you your thoughts manifested. And it's kind of like I've just shifted so much from this place where I believe that any of that is possible for someone to have more control over my life than I do. And, I remember having one of my first dark nights of the soul, or maybe not even the first, but I know when my mom passed away, it was a very deep one, and it caused me to kind of look at everything in a different way. And I remember 2 years after, one day it was like I woke up and things were different, and I looked at my son, and all of a sudden he was 2 years old. And in that moment, it was like I had realized that I was like on autopilot, because here was my son, 2 years old, but I couldn't really remember being present. I remember fighting for everything that he needed, but never really being present. And then that threw me into darkness. That threw me into a dark night of the soul, because then I started beating myself up. You know, Here I am, this mother who has been, of course, taking care of her kid, but hasn't been present with her son. And it helped me to realize that there was a pattern of that within my family. We work, as women, we work and we hustle and we get things done. We create something out of nothing. So much so to the point of our detriment, because we get to this place where we're just hustling consistently and we're not showing up for ourselves, and at that time, I didn't even realize the importance of just showing up to shows, showing up to family days. At this time he was in daycare, but I didn't realize that I should be there for all of this stuff, because my mother had never been there, because my mother had to work, because my mother had to provide. And in my mother's image and being my mother's daughter, I also had to work. I was a single mom. I had to provide. And then I realized that the reason why I was thrown into this dark night of the soul, the reason why I was thrown into this darkness, was to bring awareness into that mindset, into that mind frame that told me I had to choose between being present and providing. I had to choose whether I was going to be the mom who showed up to school all the time, or I was going to be the mom who made sure we had food on the table. And in that awareness, I saw that the darkness, that dark night of the soul, was actually a blessing, because it helped me to understand myself more deeper. And it gave me the awareness to begin to make a choice to shift that narrative, because I learned that if I wanted to, I could be both. I could be that mom who showed up to the shows, and I could still be that mom who worked to get things done. I could be present and provide. And I could do so because I got to the point where I really believed and had faith that it was possible. And I say this to say that, change can only happen when we believe that it is possible, when we have faith that it can happen. And if you find yourself in situations where you feel stuck and you're noticing patterns and you're seeing that you are stuck in this place that you do not like, you feel yourself in this dark night of the soul, you feel yourself in this darkness, then that is spirit, that is you, that is your higher self, that is universe asking you to make a choice. Do you want to continue living this life the way that you are living it, or do you want to consciously make a choice and make a change? Do you want to shift your perspective? Do you want to go right when you've been going left in circles? And when it comes to this path, consistency is key. Discipline, determination, accountability. You have to hold yourself to all of these things, because at the end of the day, the only real person that you have to answer to is you. But man, you have the opportunity to change things for yourself in such a beautiful way. And it's not easy. It's probably the hardest thing that you will ever do. But when you decide to make that change, when you decide to surrender, to just listen, not to the thoughts that are reoccurring in your head that bring you to that dark space, but to your heart that tells you that change is possible, things can start to shift for you. Things can start to change for you. And the path is not linear. It's ups and downs, and it's circles, and it's left and right. And sometimes you feel like you've taken 2 steps forward and then you're sent 1 step back. But then it's like one day you look at yourself and you think to yourself, but I go back to that life that I was living, and you realize you could never go back. And for those of us who have children, parenting while on a spiritual path, sorry for that noise, guys. Parenting on a spiritual path is so hard. You are literally learning to parent yourself and to parent a tiny human that you are responsible for, and you do not have any set example of what it is to do. And I know for me, especially with my older son, it's been hard. He's diagnosed with autism, but autism to me is just a label that we place on our children that we don't understand, that are free-spirited and love in ways that we could never imagine. And he's spunky, and he's silly, and he's loud. And he loves to scream, and he loves food and eating. And at the same time, he's cranky and fussy and all of everything at the same time. But he teaches me every day what it is to just be. To be yourself without fear, to be yourself without limitation. And as somebody who grew up thinking that, children should be seen and not heard, that you had to be a certain way, and as somebody who was forced to grow up too early and never really got to be a kid, because, had experiences in my childhood that were in my innocence, people's projections, people's assumptions were placed onto my actions, and the innocence was taken away from me. The innocence was taken away from anything that I would do. I find myself consistently in those situations with my son, trying to navigate a world that will label you, but also trying to nurture the innocence that he still has, because I feel like in the person that he is, and in the child that he is at 9 years old, he's still actually an innocent, beautiful child, and that is something to be so grateful for. But sometimes when he's yelling and screaming and all over the place, I find myself telling him to act. I find myself wanting to tell him to act right and to be calm. And, I can hear that voice in my head telling him, well, just be a normal kid, and you shouldn't be loud, and you should do exactly as I say when I say it, because I said so. But then at the end of the day, I remind myself, I don't know what it's like to be a kid. I don't know what it's like to be able to play and be silly and spin in circles until I fall to the floor and laugh and giggle and say things that just make me giggle, you know? I don't know what it is to be that anymore, but I see that in him. And in those moments, I remind myself that, maybe all of these things that he's doing, maybe that's just how kids are. Maybe that's just what kids do. And in that moment, it's like he is my biggest teacher. And, he struggles so much with school sometimes because, he's a kid, he's 9, he wants to play. And I can hear the outside world in the way that he talks to himself. When he doesn't understand something, he'll call himself stupid. Or he gets frustrated and he's like he gets mad at his brain and he's like, come on, just figure this out, just do it. And I always tell him, hey, baby, you know, just because you feel like you're not good at this or just because you're not understanding this specific thing doesn't mean that you're stupid. Doesn't mean something's wrong with you. Just maybe you think differently. Maybe you learn differently. And you need to learn it a different kind of way. And we go over things together, and majority of the time we're able to figure out ways to help him to understand some of the things that he's being asked to do, but it isn't in the way that he's being taught. It's in the way that works for him. And in those moments I can see where I am shifting patterns, where I am healing things that were passed down, where I am getting rid of that voice that we all have that tells us that we're not good enough. There's so many of us that, especially for me growing up, I was always told that I was too heavy, I was too chunky, I was too fat. This wasn't desirable, that wasn't desirable. I didn't look good in this dress because my back was big or my back was fat or you could see my stomach and all these things. And then I got to the point where I got older and every single thing that I put on, if it wasn't covering every single part of my body, then I felt like I looked absolutely disgusting. And it would bring me into this dark night of the soul and this darkness that would tell me that I was unworthy, that would tell me that I wasn't beautiful, that would tell me that nobody would ever want me. And it was in one of those dark nights of the souls recently that I realized that I am perfect exactly the way that I am. And that if I feel beautiful in something, then I am. If I want to wear something that brings me joy, I can. Because all that matters about it is how I truly feel and not what everybody tells me I should feel. And then it got me to this place where it was just like, you know what? All of me will be loved by the person that I am going to be with. All of me. And the person that I am going to be with will show up because they want to. Not because I'm trying to force them to, or not because I'm trying to deem myself worthy by them showing up. And then I realized that the more that I love myself, the more that I know that I am lovable, and the more that I know that eventually when I find my person, that they will love all of me. But I wouldn't have gotten there without going into darkness. I wouldn't have gotten there without the dark nights of the soul that I go through. In Hawaiian spirituality, it's considered that we are all bowls of light. And as we go through life and we go through experiences, we continue to put stones in our bowl that slowly start to block out our light, until one day the light can no longer be seen because now it's just covered by all of these stones. But the beauty in this is that at any moment, we can make the decision to turn those bowls over and to regain our light. So I encourage all of you in those moments of darkness to shift your perspective and think of it as a moment where you are being asked to tip over that bowl, to make that choice to tip over that bowl and regain your light and continue on your path. Because the beauty of all of this is that in darkness, there is new life, there's creation. In death, there is new life, there is creation. When it comes to death, in the aspect where society has taught us to think is that it is the end of something. But darkness is a transition. It is a transition where you get to transform in this darkness, in this void, and give birth to something new. And in all of the darkness that I have ever been through, it has made me a better person, a better mother, but it has guided me back to myself, to the light that I am. Know that you are protected. Know that your ancestors guide you. Know that you are safe. Because when you know these things, you can move with faith. I know for a lot of us, life has taught us differently. Life has taught us that we are alone. Life has taught us that everybody is out to get us. Life has taught us that people will hurt us. And that may be true. But when you love you, when you know that you are safe, when you begin to build a relationship with your ancestors and truly understand that they walk with you because they are you, they live within you, they live all around you. The earth in itself is your ancestor. The earth in itself is your guide. The air that you breathe gives you new life consistently. It allows you to live. It allows you to be reborn. You start to realize that there is so much to be grateful for, so much power to reclaim, and so much beauty in you. So when you have these moments of darkness where you feel like giving up, I ask you, I invite you to take a second to call out to your ancestors, to sit with them, to breathe, to speak to them from your heart, to release all that you are holding, and to consistently do it when you are not feeling well, and see how things shift for you, see how things change for you, see how you are making a choice to give yourself new life, and know that you are the creator of your reality. You are the creator. You are the energy of source. You are the energy of God. And you are powerful. So in the same way that you may think that someone has the ability to send energy your way to try to bring you down, know that you can always reclaim your energy and use your energy to bring yourself up. You just have to make the choice. And with that, I say, if there is any moments where you ever feel lost, or you feel like you cannot find your way, look up to the stars. in the sky. And know that your ancestors watch over you and will always help to guide you home. Peace.
Arikamabu. Thank you for listening to this episode. We look forward to continuing to find our way back to indigeneity with all of you. May your heart continue to be your guide. And remember that whenever you feel lost, you can look to the stars, and your ancestors will help you find your way back home.